SMT Nation, we back. Nation, we're going to be talking about networking here. We're going to take a look at Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile with respect to their dedicated 5G builds. Who's doing what? How far along are they? Are the networks going to continue to get better, or are they plateauing? All that commentary based on this article from Monica Alvin, FierceWireless.com. You guys will get the link in the description to refer to that article. Also in the description is the real SMT Buy Me a Coffee link. If you want to support your creators directly, that's one way to do it. You can also check out our partner, Mint Mobile. If you're looking for a really good deal on wireless service, you don't want to pay an arm and a leg, you want really good customer care, look no further than our partner, Mint Mobile. The link in the description will unlock savings. They just increased all the data allotments across all their plans and didn't touch pricing. Really unprecedented in today's economics where costs seem to be going up. Mint Mobile is giving you more value. So check them out. You'll be supporting the channel in the process of also supporting your wallet. All right, so to talk about the networking piece today, as of right now, T-Mobile is right around 275 million points of presence in their 5G UC. N41, it's their faster version of their 5G. All right, they're about 3 years in, right? The merger happened about 36 months ago, and we've kind of seen, T-Mobile hit their boom phase, which I would say was probably the first 2 years of their network build. Within those first 2 years, we saw T-Mobile really increase the number of pops covered of their 5G UC. And what that did was it basically covered up all of the major metro areas across the country and many of the suburban areas, larger suburban areas outside of those cities. That's how you cover pops. That's how you get expansion of coverage and more people with access to that connection. Well, now that we're kind of in the back end of all of this, things have really slowed down. The number of pops covered, right? Now that we're at 275 million pops, you're going to have a really hard time finishing the rest of the country's geographical space. All right, so I think Verizon has now exceeded 200 million pops covered. I think they might be around 210 million pops covered if I think the most recent quarterly earnings report pegged that number for their 5G UW, the C-band, the N77. Well, they did that in like 15 months. So basically what T-Mobile did in 24 months, Verizon has been able to do in like 14 or 15 months. Okay, so just slightly over 1 year. So clearly the Verizon pace is faster. And Verizon has a reason for that. They need to be faster because T-Mobile is out ahead and got the 5G stimulus package from the T-Mobile and Sprint merger. So that motivates Verizon to have to act with urgency. And they have responded, right? Throw in AT&T into the mix. They're somewhere around 160 million pops covered of their 5G plus, their C-band, their N77. So we're like 15 months into their build. And actually, based on my findings, I think AT&T kind of got a later start. I think they've only been building their 5G plus for about 12 or 13 months. They didn't really seem to hit a groove in their upgrades until April of last year. Now, they could have built out sooner. They just didn't. All right, so that being said, that's kind of what we've observed and that's what we've seen. All right, so that's basically, I guess a 1.5 year pace to get to 200 million maybe for them. I think what we're going to notice is that, and this is something that Dennis talked about on the podcast, the hard part, the final 30 to 50 million pops for T-Mobile, to get to 300 million pops, to get to 325 million pops, whatever their end game is going to be really tough. It's going to be grueling. It's going to be time consuming. And there's reasons for that. We're talking about mostly rural America, folks. This is the hard part of networking. This is where there's a lot of space. This is where there is low population density. All right, so the ROIC, or return of invested capital, for these carriers is very low, right? They're going to be building and upgrading sites for a very small number of people in order to create those pops covered. It's almost like, well, should we even do this? Now, who do I think this impacts the most? Who do I think is least likely to build this out properly, or who do I think is most likely to cover up these last 20, 40, 50 million pops? I think T-Mobile's going to do it. I think T-Mobile, and actually Verizon too, they've got a reason to push. And the reason for them to want to build out in these areas, and it's because they can multi-purpose their network to scale across a national footprint, right? They've got fixed wireless access. They've got 5G home internet that they want to sell. That improves the ROIC, right? That improves the possibility that they not only are going to cover up the network access for mobile users, but it's the fact that you're going to have home internet users as well. So that improves that proposition. But we're talking about towns with 5,000 people, 1,000 people, 500 people. We're talking about towns that will only allow one tower site to span the entire city, possibly even a large majority of the county, right? Think about that, folks, right? It's that spacious and low population density out there. All right, so my prediction is that T-Mobile gets the 300 million pops 5G UC covered first amongst all the big three carriers. They're currently at 275, so that's not really a bold prediction. So I predict that they will get there by the end of the year. I don't think that should be much of a problem. I think their progress at 275 today, putting them at 300 million shouldn't be too hard. I think by the end of the year, Verizon ends up somewhere around 250 to 260 million pops. I think 250 the conservative. I think 260, I think that's more of a, a reach, I suppose, but they could get there. All right, they are definitely spending money. The network pace is really good for them. AT&T, I think 200 million pops is easy. I think they probably get there by the end of Q3, actually. I think probably more realistic for AT&T is they probably hit 210 to 220 million pops by the end of the year. So where Verizon kind of is today, I think that's where AT&T ends up by the end of the year. Don't forget, both Verizon and AT&T are going to see increases in bandwidth in their fast 5G channels. All right, Verizon is going to be 160 megahertz of C-band by the end of the year across the country. You're going to see places with 200 megahertz, places with 140, places with 160, 180. AT&T is going to go from 40 megahertz of C-band to 80 megahertz of C-band, plus their DoD is an additional 40 megahertz. That's basically 120 megahertz national, with the exception of, I think, a market like Dallas, which has 140. So the populations across the country of people are going to be seeing really fast, capacitive, and really nice experiences across their 5G networks. And I'll throw this in there kind of as a bonus. AT&T has now officially kind of like warmed up to fixed wireless access, where the DSL customer is getting disconnected and they're shutting it down and decommissioning the copper. They're not going to be doing fiber right away in a particular area. They're going to be offering fixed wireless access as well with Internet Air. That also probably helps the case for AT&T pushing forward with upgrades at their current pace. I like that as well. What do you guys think? Do you think my predictions are off? Do you think they're on point? Tell me what your predictions are if you disagree. And guys, I'll be honest with you. If I'm going to put this all into put a bow on it, the conversations we're having in 2024, like I'm not even joking, like 12 months from today, let's call it May 2024, you won't be able to distinguish any of the big three carriers. They're all going to be averaging gigabit speed over mid-band channels, like average. All right, now there's going to be some markets in really deep, density metro areas. All right, the San Franciscos of the world, Miami, New York City, Chicago. Those places might not average gigabit speed because of the sheer usage. But, I mean, there's bandwidth out there ready to be utilized. As long as these carriers can get 10 gig fiber circuits, right, there are going to be rural sites with 10 gig fiber circuits that are going to be doing 2 gigabits per second on average, right? And even with 1 gig circuits, if the 10 gig circuits aren't available, a carrier is going to be doing gigabit speed at a tower site. And in a town of 500 people, right? Because it's been upgraded, modernized, it's got all the spectrum on air, and it's got a decent fiber circuit to it for backhaul. Right? This is really unprecedented. It's great to see all this happen. You could see why we followed the spectrum auctions so closely for the last few years. And Verizon's going to have a dynamic network. They got CBRS, they've got C-band. They're densifying the network. They're upgrading and modernizing. AT&T's got spectrum now. T-Mobile continues to refarm LT spectrum to 5G. They've got all the spectrum from the merger, the N41 piece. It's going to be good for the American consumer. All right, very happy that people can have a fixed wireless 5G home internet option along with a great mobile experience, and they should continue to get better. And of course, I think the distinguishing factor amongst all these carriers, who has the most dense tower grid, who's got the most redundancy, who's got the most tower sites, splitting cells, C-RAN, small cells, the millimeter wave piece, those are going to be the distinguishing factors moving forward. In 2024, you're not going to be able to tell the carriers apart based on midband. That's just the way it's going to be. What do you guys think? Sound off in the comment section below. You are the voice of the people, the SMT Nation. Let your voice be heard.